Hello, readers. Have you ever seen a baby possum? Like a real one. Tiny nose, big eyes, wrapped around its mama's back, or maybe lost in the tall grass searching for home? Now imagine this. You're scrolling through Facebook and see someone fostering a whole bunch of orphan possums. That someone? Her name is Melanie Baldwin. And thanks to one pretty persuasive friend who also happens to be an artist, Melanie ended up turning those baby animals and their wild rescue adventures into a picture book for all ages. A real one with a cover and a tail. Today, we're meeting Melanie and her illustrator friend, Don Mason, who brought Penny Possum, a baby animal rescue tale, to life. We'll talk about writing without rules, drawing with feeling, and why sometimes your instincts, just like Penny's, know exactly what to do. So, grab your trail mix, settle in, and let's take a journey through the wild, the creative, and the wonderfully unexpected, right here on Reading in the Middle. Hi, Don. Hi, Melanie. Welcome to Reading in the Middle.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
Doing good.
Awesome. So, Melanie, let's start off with the real Penny. You were fostering orphan possums and sharing it on Facebook, and then suddenly you're an author. How did that leap from life to literature? How did that happen?
Well, mostly it was my partner in crime here, Don. He started noticing my pictures, and he's an artist, and started painting them. And he had the idea that maybe we should team up and write a book together. So I thought, well, yeah, maybe we could do that.
Her story's not quite right, I'll have to tell you. She tells the story in a most engaging way. I don't even need to write a book because it's that good, but tell it, write it.
But Don, okay, so you saw Melanie's Facebook posts and you said, let's make a book. What was it about those baby possums and Penny in particular that made you believe in the power of her story?
Well, there's a lot I didn't know about possums, but the part that engaged me initially is she told about possums get run over a lot, as all of us know, when they cross the. And though the mother may get run over, the babies are inside often and quite alive. And Melanie got involved in rescuing those babies out of there. And then she began talking about what that means, like how they have to feed them every 3 hours for endless weeks, and all of this. And then she just told about all of what happened. And I thought I need to hear more of this.
So, Melanie, one of my favorite parts of the story is how real it feels because so much of it is real. What was one moment in the book that actually happened and still makes your heart swell?
I think probably it was when I actually went and rescued the opossums. It was 10 of them, Penny and brothers and sisters, but it was my first encounter rescuing wildlife to see, a mother that was dead alongside of the road and those little babies that were all over the road and picking them up and getting them home and being able to keep them alive and just kind of becoming a foster mom. That was probably the most impactful, real part of the story for me.
Yeah, I mean, doing something like that, rescuing animals in times of need, it does give you a sense of just, I don't know, it's like this approach of you being there for them. It's almost like being a mom, right? Being a parent to, some animals, right?
Certainly is.
Don, you gave Penny, Annie, Eugene, and the whole animal world so much personality. How did you design them in a way that feels true to life, but still totally storybook feel?
Well, I always preface when somebody asks me questions, I preface what I say by saying, look, and I told Melanie, I'm not an illustrator. For example, if I have to draw you, the second drawing will not look like the first drawing. And so, but as I listened to her story, and I went to the internet, which I think a person would do. And I said to the internet, let's see possums and different young possums, old possums, climbing trees, not. So I knew in general the shape of a possum, but I like to use color, and I didn't want to make it a heavy, unhappy looking scene because Melanie doesn't tell it that way. So even when it gets down to the coyote coming to look, there's the possum trying to hide out in the log. So anyway, I just did what I could do and gave them to Melanie. And if she thought it fit what she was telling, then she'd flash the okay sign.
So, Don, what was it like collaborating with Melanie? Did her words guide your art, or did your illustrations sometimes lead the way?
I think we say both ways. She tells about fireflies, the possum being out at night, and there's fireflies and stars in the sky. And so I just drew that. I think a lot of the things I draw are more like a child might draw. I just think about how did I feel when, as a kid, we'd see the fireflies and the stars. Now it's hard to see those things. Clouded sky. Anyway, so I just kind of did it that way.
I think that's how I wrote it too, is like I wanted to portray it so that a child would be able to visualize what was happening. And so I wanted it to be true to life and true to what opossums really go through. But I wanted it to have some whimsy and just wonder for kids too. So that's why I kind of included both aspects, like the pictures.
Yeah. It does. It really does. It's whimsy. It's full of joy and beauty. And Melanie, you call yourself a novice writer, but Penny's story feels so full and alive. What was your process like turning your instincts and personal experiences into a children's book?
Well, again, I wrote it just true to life. The stories actually happened, except the parts where you had to use your imagination. And so that's how I process, and that's how I write. I visualize what would happen to Penny when she actually had her big adventure. What would it feel? How would make the reader feel? And I kind of nature, and we actually do have a woods down below our house that has all the beauty of nature that I tried to portray in the book. So that was kind of my process.
Well, Melanie would totally be a fun thing. You could having a fun looking drawing. The possums, when they're young anyway, grab hay with their tail. They had the prehensile tail, and they could pick things up like a hand. And then she had photographs. Her husband built a cage for the possums, kind of like a playground. And and the videos that she took, you can see these possums going along and holding straw behind them. And so that made a good drawing, but it also brought out kind of the whimsical in there of going along, taking its straw to its cage to make whatever it's going to make with the nest, I suppose. So that was one of the ways that informed what I should draw and how I should draw it.
Yes, because Don, you walk this tightrope between realism and whimsy so well. How did you figure out the tone for the visuals, especially with the story so rooted in real life animal rescue?
There's not a lot that I drew that would be sad. The one drawing that I did of the possums going along the road, you can see the giant truck tires going by. And that's probably the one that comes closest to being an unhappy or startling image. I think there are 20-some pictures in the book. And I think that children, the related question, which I suppose you'll ask and Melanie can talk about it, is the age range that this book would appeal to. And we didn't know how to say that. I think in the end it ends up being up to 18 or some started odd number, because the text may not be understandable completely. One thing, that I'm rambling around, but I said to Melanie, write with the vocabulary that you use, like the word persnickety, which she used. And some other words, because that's part of the flavor. That's the way Melanie tells these stories. And the child looking at it may not know how to translate persnickety, and the parent reading it would do it. So that's the way I thought about how do you draw a possum being persnickety.
But that's what makes it whimsy, right? Being authentic, being your true self when you're writing, right? You don't want to be anyone else. Persnickety, I use that word all the time, but you may have some young people that may not know that, and now they're learning new vocabulary. Great, good.
That's what I did think that, we probably we probably broke a lot of rules in writing the children's book, but one thing I thought was words, vocabulary words, if they didn't know, they can still get the gist of it by reading the story. And that does expand their vocabulary. And I thought, well, I'm not going to shy away from that. So,
well, one thing we did decide as we started the book that we went to the libraries, yours and others, and I read through the young children's books on possums. And one thing we noticed is though there's some of them are quite charming and have excellent illustrations and maybe fun behavior in them, but they tend to emphasize facts. How long does the possum live? How does it do this or that? And we decided that isn't the kind of story Melanie tells. Well, she can tell you what facts are, about possums. But this story would just be about what it was like for her to take care of 11 possums for however long you had to do it and feed them every 3 hours and do all the things you have to do for them. And so this book is somewhat different than maybe the usual book because it just relies on the experience that Melanie had for the most part with this. And it has some facts, but not really like other books do. It doesn't emphasize that.
No, that's not what we want, right? And Melanie, you had mentioned about rules. You don't worry about those. You wrote from the heart. So, right now, have you had any response from readers? Are kids connecting with Penny in a way that you hoped?
We've not had a lot of response from children yet, but I have had several people, adults, read the book, and they were delighted and said they were excited to give it to their child or their grandchildren. And so we've had positive responses so far, which I'm thrilled.
That's wonderful. Don, you mentioned about ages, and I'm thinking all ages. There are certain books that you can tap into, and all ages can read. You're never too young. You're never too old. I mean, even if you're reading to a child that doesn't read yet, that's still including them in the story. That's still giving them, showing them your illustrations. You're showing them the visuals. You're reading to them with the text. All ages, 0 through 100, right? To read the book. But yeah, well, I yes.
Small book in a sense. I don't know how many pages or less. And I think what will happen is that the parent or grandparent reads the book as we often do to children who are too young. And then when you go back to it, they can do more. First you're talking in terms of the pictures, and then later the words are getting added on. To me, it's kind of like the Harry Potter experience. I remember it. This is not a book of the size of Harry Potter or the difficulty, but that's how one of my daughters read all of those books with her children. The first ones were just kind of discussed. You tell the story of Harry Potter. And then as years pass and the child is reading the story, and of course, those are big books. I think this will be an experience kind of like that.
Now, Don, you've been nudging Melanie toward another book, this time a box turtle with a pretty epic story. What do you love about that idea, and why do you think this collaboration should continue?
Well, the story is startling and how different it is. I should let you tell it.
Go ahead.
As I understand it, the turtle, this is really that happened, is hit by a vehicle, a car, a truck, and severely injured. And Melanie takes it out to the wilds, which people who are listening to this may know. The wilds is a wildlife treatment center, I suppose I'm going to call it. That's probably not the term they use, owned by the Columbus Zoo. It lost a leg, and the leg had to be amputated. Now, who would think of amputating a turtle's leg? You'd think, well, the thing's going to die. And apparently it had to go, but it survived. So Melanie was there for the experience of the amputation and the long time it took for the animal to survive. And so she thought it had been thinking about what does that mean? How is that similar to life for us and other animals and facing tremendous odds? But so I don't know if you followed the turtle and where it is today, but.
Well, it spent months and months at the wilds, and I thought that would be an engaging story to have the turtle having adventures over at the wilds, which has, giraffes and hippopotamuses and all kinds of animals. There could be quite a few whimsical stories within the story that actually did happen. And once the turtle was healed, they gave me a call and I was able to go pick it up and set it free close to where obviously not on the road, but I set it free close to where we found it, because box turtles, they only go about a mile their entire lives. So they're familiar with the area. And so it was fun to find a place to release that turtle. And to me, that is so rewarding as far as being a wildlife rehabilitator, is to set that animal free and give it a chance to live its best life. And I just thought that might be, we could develop that story a little bit more, and it would be engaging, and even engaging for people or children who might have a disability, that they can still live a life that is full and be everything that they were created to be.
That is a great story. I hope you're working on that, because that's, just the idea that this is a true story, right? They were going to give up on this turtle. Oh, he's just going to die. Who cares, But they amputated his leg and he survived. And then you let him go back into his home, because you could have kept him. I personally would have kept him. I would have kept the turtle. I'm like, oh, you little thing, but you really, both of you should think about that, writing that and illustrating that. And I just love that wildlife, hands-on. It's not just from the books. And how is working with animals in real life, how has that shaped the way you see storytelling, or even how you see Penny's voice?
Well, it's quite an adventure, and I've learned a lot over the past 4 or 5 years that I've been doing this, and every animal's different. They do have little personalities, and I just think that to me, it's rewarding that I'm giving a part of myself to, this little creature who needs my help to survive, and to watch it grow and thrive, and then to return it and release it back into the wild where, that's where it's meant to be. I mean, even to have one day of freedom, to me, is better than a lifetime in a cage.
Yes.
So I don't know. That's just, I like in my writing about Penny and maybe the next book, I want to show that it's a real thing. Conservation and wildlife rehabilitation is worthwhile. And I do want to educate people on doing that. But I want to do it in an interesting and fun way that I would enjoy reading. And I hope that children and, like you said, all ages would enjoy. To me, it just seems like intuitively, that's the way my process is going.
Very good. Good process. Good thought. Thank you. Don, I'm going to get a little nerdy for a second with this question. So what tools, mediums, or secret techniques did you use to bring Penny's world to life on the page?
These are all watercolors with some acrylic added where it is needed. I was just thinking about, we live in a little town in Southeast Ohio, and we work with encouraging people to paint and do art, because that's just our interest. But one of the things that this group makes clear is our activities, you don't need to be an artist. In fact, I discourage people from using the word artist, because if a person compares himself or herself to someone else doing the same thing, often we won't do it, because there's always somebody who plays the flute better or draws the picture better or paints. But everyone has creativity. And so I suppose the secret potion is to gain confidence for a person to just go ahead and, well, we tell people when we're doing your assignment is, if you're going to check out a canvas, it's $10 to be in the show. The only thing you have to do is fill the canvas with paint. We don't say anything about how the possum, if it were a possum, how it should be drawn. And people do amazing things. And the response that most people make is, well, I haven't drawn anything since the 3rd grade. Well, you probably will draw about like you did at the 3rd grade if that's all you've done. But that's okay, because you always show something about your feeling when you paint or draw something. It works for me too. So the cover on the book I especially like, because the possum does look young and looks kind of naive. And how did that happen? Who's to say? There's kind of magic, and when people draw or sing, your personality comes out, and you don't have to worry too much about that. I'm not really answering your question.
Oh, yes, you are. You are answering my question.
So there's no draw a possum that looks friendly versus one that doesn't. We're going to
Well, it's very friendly. And I know there's some people out there, some listeners that don't like possums, scared of them exactly. And so making it look so friendly, you captured that.
Yeah, we're doing a book signing soon at the library, the children's wing of the library, and there'll be outlines of possums. And the only thing is for the child to choose whatever colors, or adult, if they want to do whatever they want to do with that outline of the possum. And it will turn out to be maybe something fun that the person didn't think they were going to do. What I say to anyone is, and I do apply to myself, don't think too long about what you're doing. Just go ahead. Watercolor is not a precise kind of thing to do. You use the colors, use the brushes, and don't think a long time, and don't tear your work up. Finish it, and then you'll have something maybe charming and wonderful.
Yeah, there's no do-over with watercolor.
No, yeah, you can't be a perfection.
No, you can't. But that's the beauty of it, right? Now, Don and Melanie, I have some rapid-fire fun questions for you guys.
Okay.
And so I'll start with you, Don. Okay. So favorite animal to draw besides Penny?
Oh, I just drew one that was fun for a person. It's a lemur. They come out of Madagascar. A lemur looks kind of like a cross between a raccoon and a cat or something. It has a very long tail, usually striped. It's a monkey, basically, and it has a long striped tail, and I found that fun. The person just asked me, so why did you put those lemurs in there around me in this painting? Because she's in the painting. It just seemed like a fun thing to have, lemurs. So right now, lemurs.
Don't they have those big eyes? Like,
yes, they do. And they have kind of glow.
Yeah.
Some people they're frightening.
Yeah, I love that. I like that. Melanie, what's your favorite wild animal to rescue?
Besides an opossum,
Mm-hmm.
probably squirrels. We have 3 baby squirrels right now that we're fostering, and they're just very sweet and loving. And so probably squirrels. We also tried to rescue a injured baby fox, but sadly it didn't live very long. But they're really cute. I don't really have a favorite. I like opossums, which, I was like you said, the person that said, opossums, oh, they're scary, they're ugly. And then when and I'm expecting my first encounter with wildlife rehabilitation would be a squirrel, a bunny, something cute, a turtle, but no, it's an opossum. I'm like, no, but they're very gentle and kind. They get a bad rap. They are not the creature that people's made them out to be. And so I think it's part of my mission to tell people that they are wonderful, kind, beneficial animals. So I guess they're still my favorite animal to rescue and raise.
Don, go-to snack while writing or illustrating, or while illustrating. And then Melanie, you can tell me your favorite go-to snack while writing.
Well, I didn't hear the first part of your question. My favorite.
Your favorite go-to snack?
Go-to. Well, lately it's those, there's 3 puddings that you can get: butterscotch, banana, and chocolate. I don't know whoever makes them. And so all the rest are instant things. You put 2 cups of milk and you heat it up and it all thickens. So that's what I've been doing. Lots of pudding.
Melanie, what's your favorite go-to?
I guess my go-to snack when I'm writing would be jalapeno and cheddar Cheetos.
Oh, I'm going to have to try pudding and jalapeno cheddar Cheetos.
That sounds good together, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to try it. Melanie, the book that made you fall in love with storytelling.
The Boxcar Children.
Mm.
And when I was little, my cousins and my sister and myself, we would act that out. We would we called ourselves the Boxcar Bunch. And we would like act out the stories, and we actually pretended that we lived in the boxcar, just like the book. So that was probably one of my favorites.
Don, what book made you fall in love with storytelling?
Well, I told a lot of kids lots of stories, and I wrote some of them down. I was going to Boxcar Children. I could probably say that one myself. I was a therapist in my working days, and so I told stories to the kids. They were adolescents for the most part. Most of them were African American at one point in my life, and so it wasn't a book, but I would go back to office at the end of the day and write a little 2-page, 3-page story based on something that that particular young person had told me. It wasn't revealing theirs. But anyway, so I became comfortable with things about their life. And the more I wrote them, the more I did of it. But I wasn't reading someone else's book. And most of them were realistic, but there was certain fancy in them because I didn't know all about their lives completely. So anyway, I made notes, and they knew it. I would read them back to what I wrote.
Thank you. So here's another question, rapid fire. Melanie, if Penny had a theme song, what would it be?
I Will Survive.
Goodness. And this is for both of you. Dream place to read this book aloud.
Place to read it aloud?
Mm-hmm. Do you have a dream place where you would like to read the book aloud?
Well, of course, the library is a possibility. But
There you go. Bingo. That's it. Kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, probably the library or in a classroom.
Well, there's a coffee shop in town, and it doesn't attract a lot of children, mischiefs,
Right.
But I think so. I would read it. You know who I would read it to? On Friday mornings, there's a group that meets. It's just 5 or 6 men, and it's called a Romeo group, retired older men eating out. I didn't make that term up. But as I listen to, they don't get into talking about things that other than kind of an older person's group looks at things in the rearview mirror a lot. And they talk about health. They talk about their career or something. And I would read this book.
That would be funny.
I think that would provoke a really conversation. Because when you do that with a person, then they start reflecting on their growing up and their experiences and your questions about what book and what do you eat when you're doing this. So that's what I think. Some Friday I'm going to read this book to them.
I hope so, and let me know how that goes.
Yeah, it'll go well, I think.
I think so. Well, Don and Melanie, I want to thank you both for taking the time to talk about your illustrations and your book and your process and what favorite snack is your go-to when you're illustrating and writing. We appreciate that, and our listeners will appreciate that as well. And I'm going to tell our listeners to definitely go and get Penny Possum, baby animal rescue tale, and you must go and get it. I have a copy, but I'm going to make sure there's copies in our library and our branches so we can have those so all of our young people and families and teens, because it's for all ages, will be able to read it and enjoy this wonderful book. And I want to thank you both.
Well,
Thank you. Thanks for inviting us.
Yes, we really appreciate it.
Of course.
Today, we met 2 creators who didn't set out to make a book, but followed their instinct, heart, and a really great idea. Melanie Baldwin turned a moment of real-life wildlife rescue into a story, and Don Mason brought it to life with illustration. Together, they gave us Penny, a possum with courage, curiosity, and a story worth telling. What I loved most? This book wasn't about perfection. It was about trying something new, trusting your voice, and letting a story grow, even if you don't know exactly where it's going, just like Penny. Thanks for listening to Reading in the Middle. If you enjoyed this episode, tell a friend, leave a review, and also don't forget to read Penny Possum out loud to someone you love. I'm Anisha Jeffries. Until next time, keep reading, keep imagining, and always follow your story.